At the United Nations Security Council, India has once again spotlighted the alarming nexus between illicit arms trafficking and cross-border terrorism. Addressing an open debate on small arms and light weapons, India's permanent representative to the UN, Ambassador Parvathaneni Harish, called on the growing sophistication of terror networks that rely on illegal weapons to sustain violence. In a strong and deliberate message, India urged the global community to adopt a zero-tolerance policy, not just towards terror groups, but also towards the states that arm, enable and protect them. The deadly explosion in India's capital city, New Delhi, this week, which claimed over a dozen lives, serves as a grim reminder of how terrorism continues to strike at the heart of India. Investigations point towards familiar patterns: sophisticated explosives, imported weapon components, and coordination typical of cross-border terror operations. While India mourned yet another act of terrorism, its envoy at the United Nations made it clear that the problem runs far deeper, one that begins with the unchecked flow of small arms and ammunition across borders, aided by organized trafficking networks and state complicity.
India has fought the scourge of terrorism for several decades and is therefore aware of the dangers posed by the diversion and illicit transfer of small arms and ammunition to armed non-state actors and terrorist groups. The illicit trafficking of small arms.
At the Security Council, Ambassador Harish drew direct attention to how illicit arms flows sustain terrorist organizations operating across South Asia. Without naming Pakistan, his remarks clearly pointed to the long-standing pattern of state-sponsored terrorism emanating from across India's western border. From the use of smuggled rifles in Kashmir to drone-drop weapons in Punjab, India's envoy underscored that Pakistan continues to remain a key conduit for weapon traffickers and extremist groups alike.
India has suffered due to cross-border terrorism carried out using illicit weapons trafficked across our borders, including now through the use of drones. The increase in the volume and sophistication of such arsenals reminds us that these groups cannot sustain themselves without being enabled, financed or supported. An integrated approach to small arms and light weapons.
India's message carried a strong warning that the illicit trafficking of small arms is not an isolated criminal problem, but a direct enabler of terrorism and geopolitical instability. For decades, India has faced the brunt of Pakistan's proxy warfare, where terrorists armed with trafficked weapons have targeted civilians, security forces, and vital infrastructure. New Delhi argues that such flows cannot exist without the silent sanction of those who provide safe havens, financing, and logistical cover to these groups. At the heart of India's intervention was a demand for accountability. Ambassador Harish emphasized that arms embargoes, key tools authorized by the Security Council, must be applied objectively without political selectivity. India's concern stems from years of seeing these mechanisms weakened by geopolitical considerations, which allow states like Pakistan to escape scrutiny despite their continued involvement in armed terror groups across borders.
The Security Council must continue to uphold a zero-tolerance approach to terrorism in all its forms and manifestations, and to those who facilitate, sponsor, finance, or enable the use and movement of such weapons.
New Delhi's statement at the UNSC reflects a broader regional reality that terrorism in South Asia cannot survive without cross-border enablers. For decades, Pakistan has played both arsonist and firefighter, publicly denouncing terrorism even as its soil hosts groups like Lashkar-e-Taiba and Jaish-e-Mohammed, both sanctioned by the UN. These outfits rely on the illegal flow of small arms, light weapons and explosives to sustain their operations. By calling out the nexus between state-backed terror and arms trafficking, India is pushing the UN to confront a problem the world can no longer ignore.
Let me reiterate India's firm commitment in preventing the misuse of small arms and light weapons by terrorist groups and thereby continue to contribute in the global fight against terrorism.